Okay, ready? What's up? It's Susie from Hey Grill Hey. Brandon's here today helping me out. We are doing a low and slow kettle cook. We're gonna make some beautiful ribs on the shiny red Weber kettle behind us. Let's do it. So we just rolled out a Charcoal 101 video and a ton of the comments in there asked for a low and slow smoking on the kettle video. Now, admittedly, this is not my area of expertise. I tend to use my smokers for low and slow smoking, my kettle for hot and fast grilling, but Brandon here, Brandon is the expert on low and slow kettle cooking. I think you have done more hours on the Weber kettle smoking things than anyone I know. So Brandon is taking the lead on this video. He's gonna walk you through everything from setup, smoking, temperatures, venting, all the things that you need to know to make a low and slow smoke on your Weber kettle successful. You ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, you're gonna, I've done it before, but you're gonna teach me too while we teach these guys. It's gonna be a good day.
All right, let's get this kettle set up for low and slow today. The most popular method for doing this is the snake method. It's usually done with briquettes. You stack them in a semicircle around the edge of the grill on the lower charcoal grate. We're not gonna be doing that today. We've got lump charcoal, so I'm gonna do it a different way. We're gonna take all the coals, we're gonna pile them all on one side of the grill. We're just gonna light about a half a chimney or so and dump them on one end of the coals. Now what that's gonna do is those initial coals are gonna bring the grill up to the temperature that we want, and then it's going to continue burning through the pile of coals to maintain that temperature over the next 6 hours or so. If you need to go longer than that, you'll want to look into that snake method.
So snake method, briquettes, tends to run a little bit longer. I've seen pictures of like perfect snake method execution on the outside, but the Brandon method, we're calling it the lumpy Brandon.
So we've set this grill up for 2-zone cooking. So we've got our fire on this side, we'll put our food on this side. So how this is set up here is we've built the charcoal pile, right? The lumpy Brandon pile. And to light the lumpy Brandon pile, you dump your lit coals onto this one end. And now what that's gonna do is it's slowly gonna burn through the pile as the ribs cook. Now the fire's set up and going. The next thing you wanna do is chuck a wood chunk on it and put a couple of wood chunks in line with the pile here to get your smoke for your meat. And then while this is getting lit and set up, because you wanna let it sit for a minute so you don't get any dirty smoke, we'll go over the vent adjustments. Now the bottom vents on these grills, I usually put open about the width of a number 2 pencil. So that's what you want to be able to see through those blades at the bottom. This grill here has some really whacked blades, so we're going to leave them shut.
We use it a lot.
We're going to leave them shut, and we're going to hope that we can maintain temperature. But now that the fire is going in here and it's set up how we want it, we're going to let it burn for a few minutes before we start prepping the meat, just so that it gets going. We're going to put everything back in this grill, let it get up to temp, and then we'll play with the top vent when we come back.
So how long will a smoking setup like this get you in terms of time?
So it depends on your temperature that you want to run at. If you're running this at 225 to 250, this will probably last anywhere from 5-6 hours. If you're going any hotter than that, it's going to burn faster, obviously. So if you need to go any longer than 5 or 6 hours for your food, you really want to check out that snake method, or you can do this same exact thing and just add charcoal halfway through the cook. On these grills, it's pretty easy because you can just get in there with some gloves, lift the rack out, add some unlit charcoal to the end of your pile, put everything back in, and
keep rolling.
Todd's your uncle.
Ma'am's your aunt?
Your uncle.
Todd is your uncle!
Yeah.
Ooh, okay, I have another question for you.
Shoot.
So I have another question for you. Bottom vents, pencil, top vents, how much?
About the same. And one thing you need to remember on these grills is you can have the vents set at a specific temperature, but you will have to make adjustments. This kind of cooking on this setup is not a set it and forget it kind of a thing. So you'll have to sit out here and you'll probably have to make adjustments every 20 to 30 minutes. But one thing to remember on that is they need to be small adjustments and you need to give them time to take effect. So usually when the fire is coming up to temp, I leave this top vent about halfway open and I'll let it sit for about 10 minutes and see where this temperature lands. And if it's too hot, I'll close it down a little. If it's too low, I'll open it up a little bit more to let it get a little bit hotter. And you'll have to do that same exact thing throughout the entire cook to maintain the temperature.
This is why I do not do this a lot. I have 3 children to babysit.
I do not.
Sometimes the kettle babysitting is a little bit much for me, but I'm glad that you're very good at it. Okay, now can we prep some ribs?
Let's do it. All right, so to start these ribs off, we've scored the membrane on the back. Now I'm just gonna hit them with a little bit of beef rub, and then sweet rub, and then some of the sweet heat wing glaze that comes in our wing kit. You can find all this stuff in the store at heygrillhey.com. All right, now that these ribs are all seasoned up, let's get them on the grill. It's running at a nice 275 degrees. We'll probably adjust those vents and knock it down just a little bit, but let's go.
Ribs are on, vents are adjusted, holding temperature. We probably got about 5 hours. So while I have a minute, I'm gonna ask Brandon some rapid fire, low and slow kettle cooking questions that I've seen come in through the comments, questions that I've had myself, and you're gonna answer them. You ready?
Sure.
Okay, does it matter where the vents are positioned on the lid, like over the coals or over the meat?
Yes, it does. So right now I have the vent over the top of the coals, but that's just because I want to see what the temperature is over here on this side of the grill. So we have the thermometer over here to kind of check the temperature. And then what I'll do, since it's running about right where I want it, is I'll turn this just like this. And what that does is while the smoke and the heat are in there, once they rise to the top, it forces them to come up over the top of the meat and then out on the meat side. If you leave the vent right over top of the coals, all that heat and smoke just comes up and straight out.
Question number 2, does having unlit charcoal banked on the side change the flavor profile of the smoke? Because that charcoal is gonna be igniting throughout the cook.
It does a little bit. A lot of people are worried about that when you're cooking in one of these, but it's not like gross, dirty charcoal smoke flavor. So what happens when you light these coals and they sit in this 250-degree grill is those coals come up to temperature with the grill. So they don't take as long to ignite. They don't smolder very dirty for very long. So you do get a little bit of dirty charcoal taste, but not enough that it hurts anything. In fact, the flavor that I get off of these grills doing this method is my favorite, hands down, offset pellet charcoal smoker flavor, this right here. And so that little burst of dirty smoke from those new charcoal briquettes or new lump pieces igniting really isn't that big of a deal.
I actually think it does change the flavor profile, but I don't think it's for the worse.
No.
It's definitely a heavier smoke flavor profile than you would get from a pellet smoker, for sure. So if you're somebody that likes kind of that stronger smoke flavor in the stuff that you're making, I think this is a great approach. Next question, I saw you add some wood chunks periodically across the top of, your charcoal bank. Does it matter if you use chunks or chips, or what's your preference there?
So for this situation, I really like chunks. And the reason why is if you have this pile in here and you're trying to get it to burn through the pile slowly, if you load the top of that pile up with wood chips, the fire will actually burn those chips faster than it will the charcoal. So if you load the top with wood chips, it's just gonna shoot straight across. All your coals are gonna ignite as one, and it's not gonna last nearly as long. Plus, I find that you get better smoke flavor out of chunks. They have more moisture content to them. They make a nicer, better tasting smoke, in my opinion.
I agree. So we talked a little bit about the snake method, which is perfectly organized briquettes across the side versus the more casual version of the lumpy Brandon. Having tried both, do you think the effort of setting up the snake method with all of the perfectly arranged coals is worth the effort versus the lumpy Brandon where it's more dump and go?
Well, it depends. It's mostly about cook time. So if you have something that you want to cook for a long time, like a pork shoulder, or people even do briskets on these with the snake method, then it's totally worth the time. If you're going anywhere longer than 6 hours, it's the absolute way to do it. But for casual stuff like ribs, or if you're going to smoke something small like a tenderloin, pork tenderloin or something like that, just dump it in and go. It's quick and easy. You don't have to sit there for 20 minutes and set up the snake and align your wood chunks perfectly. This way works perfectly fine for that.
Last question, last technical question. Water pan or no water pan? Is it necessary with this particular setup and cooking style?
I don't run with a water pan ever in any of my smokers. If I put a pan in there, it's to catch grease, and then sometimes I'll put some water in it just to help with that. But over the years, I've found that it's just not necessary. Like, I can't tell a difference, water pan or no, so I just don't.
Okay.
I just don't do it.
Final question. How do you feel about me naming this method the Lumpy Brandon?
That's fantastic.
Yes!
The more fun names, the better.
Okay. That's it for my questions and things that I've seen. If you have any additional questions about low and slow charcoal cooking, please leave them in the comment section below. Brandon and I will both be in there to help answer your questions. And I know you were talking about like getting into really this style of cooking for the first time, and it's not easy.
Yeah, listen, I expect everybody that's a beginner that's going to try this to have questions. This is a method that takes a little bit of practice. It's probably not going to be perfect the first time you try it. It's kind of hard to control temperatures on these things. You got to kind of learn how to do it. It's not very intuitive right up front. So please, if you do try this and you're struggling, please ask those questions. I'll answer whatever you ask. And one thing that I thought was really helpful when I first started out doing this is I would build fires and just practice without food in it. The first couple of times before I tried to cook anything big, I just built a fire just to see how long it would last and to kind of help figure out how to control temperatures. So that's something that I could recommend too. If you have time and you've got extra charcoal, build yourself a test fire and figure it out before you throw your $100 brisket on there.
For sure. I always say, people who are intimidated by stepping outside and using a smoker for the first time, you didn't get to know your oven by just firing it up once and then you're making world-class meals on it. You have, you develop a favorite burner, if there's hot spots in your oven. Same thing's true for your smokers. You just need to give them a little bit of time and attention and get to know them, and then it becomes second nature. I can't wait to eat these ribs.
Okay, I walked over to this kettle to check the vents, check the temperature, and I just thought of something that we didn't mention before that we should probably put in this video. So this grill was running a little bit hot, so I've closed down the top vent just a little bit. And I want to remind you, when you make vent adjustments, be patient, give it some time, and see what happens to the temperature for 10 minutes or so after you do. But what I want to touch on is these thermometers on these Weber kettles. This one has one on the top. A lot of them do. The temperature reading on these things is about 50 to 75 degrees higher than what you're actually seeing on the grate. Now, when I run cooks like this, I like to use an external thermometer, but it's not necessary. I use this a lot too. And right now we're reading about 300, 325 degrees. So that grate temp is probably between 250 and 275. But that's just something to look out for when you're doing these low and slow, is this thermometer is not necessarily the most accurate thing on the planet.
We've been on for how long?
We're at about 4 hours. This was a small rack of ribs.
They smell amazing. You just check the temperature. The meat's pulling back from the bones. They look amazing. So give us a quick rundown on where we're at.
So these ribs are sitting at about 190 degrees. This is about where I like to glaze them if I'm going to. And today we're using the sweet heat sauce, the wing sauce. They're going to be really good. For coals, like I said, we've only been running for about 4 hours, maybe a little bit longer than that. But this rack of ribs was small, and I did a higher temperature. We're running about 275. But I would easily say there's another 2 hours worth of charcoal in there, maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours. So we did pretty good on that.
Let's get them sauced.
Yeah, let's go.
I'm ready to eat them. I've been smelling them all day. Are the ribs done yet?
Yeah, they're done.
Can I eat them now?
Yeah, I'm gonna pull them off.
Okay.
And then they probably need to cool down for a minute. But
fair. So I have a question for you. We didn't wrap these. We didn't do anything. What do you look for like rib doneness when you're doing this like charcoal style of cooking?
So there's a few ways to tell. This rack is a little bit small. So the first way that I tell is the bend test. So I'll pick it up in the middle of the rack and see if it bends, how much give it has, and if the meat starts to split a little bit, that's about when it's done. But like I said, this rack is a little bit small. So the bend test doesn't really do well on here. So how I told that these ones were done, the bones are starting to poke out a little bit on this side of the rack of ribs. And also I used a thermometer, a nice instant read thermometer. And I like to pull my ribs off when I do that anywhere between like 197 and 203. That's about when they're perfect. The 203 side is when they start falling off the bone. So
I just gave them the old sniff test. It says that they're done. I just want to eat them, that's all.
well, I mean, if you want to cut into them while they're piping hot, be
No,
my guest.
I will wait. I will let them rest for a minute, but I'm totally mouth-watering, ready to bite into these.
All right, while we're waiting for these ribs to cool down a little bit, now is a good time to remind you that we just shot a Charcoal 101 video where we go over everything charcoal, how to shut down the grill, you know, how to start it up, everything like that. So right now what we're gonna do is we're gonna close all the vents on this thing, roll it over there, and just let it sit just like we do in the other video.
The oxygen being gone will choke out any leftover fire, leftover heat, everything left will burn down to ash, and then you can dump it into your ash bucket and get rid of it later.
Yep. All right, let's cut this thing up.
Yes.
I'm gonna give you a piece and see what you think.
Yes.
Right
So
with
I
this.
love pellet grill ribs. I love 3-2-1 ribs. I love offset. I love ribs. I just love ribs. But I'm super excited to have some low and slow ribs on the kettle because this really is kind of Brandon's specialty, and I haven't done them myself a ton. So this is like a little treat for me.
Okay, they're still really hot. but
Okay,
Go for it.
I'll live. I eat hot stuff all the time. It's kind of my thing, actually. I don't know if you can see. The smoke ring on these ribs is so deep. The flavor is definitely a heavier wood smoke profile than you would get from a pellet smoker, but not overwhelming. There's no taste of like burnt smoke, acrid smoke, dirty smoke. Bite through is perfect, and the texture, they're a little crunchy on the bottom from you scoring the membrane, and that sweet heat glaze on top is so good. Brandon, these are great ribs.
Todd, I cut this one just for you.
Yeah.
Come get it.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. I hope you picked up a couple tips and tricks for cooking low and slow on your Weber kettle. If you have any additional questions, please drop them in the comment section below. We will help you out on your journey to becoming a backyard barbecue hero. See you next time.